you train somebody on something and 2 months later they're calling you back, say, hey, what was this? You said something about that. Or, hey, can you come back out? I had two guys who were out on vacation when you came out last time. So I started shooting myself on video and I text the supervisor the video and they're like, oh, this is cool. Send me a video on this or send me a video on that. And again, like I had a business in the past. I kind of always thought like, let me find a corner in this market that Joseph Blackman could play in. But that was that seed planted of like, I could start a service around this because they like it. A lot of dealers, a lot of manufacturers don't do it. They don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it.
Sprinkled into popular workplace comedies, there's usually a scene or an episode of a new hire being stuck watching a corny, outdated training video. In the real world, workplace training is a massive undertaking for organizations of all sizes. In fact, there's an entire ecosystem of private companies that facilitate training for the revolving door of new hires that companies onboard, commanding big invoices for their services. But after playing 4 seasons as a defensive tackle at South Dakota State University and graduating with a degree in consumer economics, workplace training was the last thing on Joseph Blackman's mind. And as he entered the job market in 2010, right in the middle of the aftermath of the '08 financial crisis, Blackman found that college couldn't uphold its original promise, that a cushy, white-collar job was on the other side waiting for him, briefcase and all. So, after walking the podium, he moved back in with his parents to his hometown of Pittsburgh, California, a small town in the East Bay area. He spent his time reading books on entrepreneurship and filming music videos to make extra cash, eventually finding work as a cable installer for AT&T. And while it wasn't his dream job, the role put him inside the homes of the wealthy entrepreneurs and business owners that make up San Francisco's upper crust. Recognizing the access that position gave him, Joseph quickly became a master at small talk, slowly opening his eyes to the possibilities with each cable installation. This habit eventually opened the door to his first entrepreneurial venture.
The franchise was called Instant Imprints. What we did was we made branded apparel like polos, hats, hoodies, business cards, signage, banners, trade show booths, and all that fun stuff. I roll up to this guy's house and it's huge, like huge house. It's the wraparound driveway with the big atrium, the backyard where you look out and you can see a whole nother city behind. Like, it's just, I'm like, so, what do you do? Right? That's the question. What do you do? And then the follow-up questions from there. But that whole time, like, I was stacking my bread. Again, I'm living with my parents. I'm not doing stupid stuff with my money. Like, I'm saving money. I had the video business, and I'd always I tell myself, like, only spend money that I made through videos versus like my 9 to 5. So I would shoot music videos for like $200-$300. I'll do 2 or 3 a week. And all that money will be like my spending money, like going to the movies, dates, or whatever, like hanging out. Like, that would be the money that I would spend. And the other money I would just shove aside, from my actual AT&T job. And I think I was making like $62,000 a year. So it wasn't crazy, but it was decent at that time for a 22, 23-year-old. And so that was like the money that I stashed. And I was able to, having those conversations with that guy. He's like, hey, man, you ever thought about owning your own business? I'm like, dude, talk dirty to me. Like, that's where I'm at. Like, let's go. And so he was like, we got this thing going on. And like 10 conversations later, I'm like, let's do it. And so, yeah, I used the seller financing. Seller finance is where the person that you buy something from, they carry the note and you just make payments on it over time. And so he was trying to get out, and there's a whole delta out there right now. Like, there's a lot of OGs, a lot of baby boomers trying to get out of their companies right now. And if you're a youngster, you got a decent head on your shoulders, you could take over that business and just pay them all the way through retirement. Like, they would, that's their retirement. If you just paid them an extra $2,500, $3,000 a month out of the revenue of their business, like, they would sell it to you, and you wouldn't have to give up your left kidney just to get in. And so, yeah, you're going into that business. Like, that taught me a lot. I mean, brick and mortar, that's tough. Like, you got to be there. Like, you got to be there. So you're, Monday through Friday at such time to such time, you're there. I had employees from the start, which is crazy. Like, I'm 24, 25, and I got 3 employees. I got it up to 2 locations and 6 employees. So I was, again, like, imagine me just telling, guys twice my age, like, hey, man, like, you can't keep showing up late, or like, hey, sweetie, like I know you got kids and stuff, but like I need you here, like I need you here. So that was a growing experience for me. The business didn't end up how I wanted it to end. It was one of those beasts where like cash flow got too crazy. It's those businesses can be, you'll lose a deal for somebody, they'll buy 100 t-shirts for 5 cents less down the road. So you lose the deal that way. Like it was something that, again, it taught me a lot. Like I had a lot of reps at sales. People will walk in, maybe like 20 customers a day who will walk in. And so those 20, I'm standing with them, trying to upsell them, trying to get them to do X, Y, and Z. And so those reps, man, those put hair on your chest for sure. Cause you start to learn your tonality, you start to learn your pacing, you start to learn who you talk to and how you talk to them. You start to learn how to mirror somebody, where they're at in life, where they're at in the decision making process. You start to figure out all these little micro interactions and how to, not manipulate them, but how to navigate them to get your desired result. And like those reps, man, are second to none. Again, like if you're a youngster, get into sales where you can get as many reps on the board as possible, because you won't know how to shoot a basketball unless you shoot the ball, 1,000 times over the course of 5 weeks. You'll start to figure out your rhythm in your shot. But like you can't study it. You can't just watch somebody do it. You actually got to do it. So those reps helped me out so much in that business.
And so you exit that business,
Yep.
and then you find your way into heavy machinery sales.
Yeah. So the exit was pretty much a crash and burn. Like that was a lot of scarring, and I still carry some of that financial scar tissue with me, and like just those moments of, again, having a business and it failing. Like I consider it a fail. It wasn't a win, but that moment I was able to sell my business. I had a rental property that I bought at the same year that I bought the business. So I had some equity in my rental property, and selling that rental property helped me get out of a lot of the financial scar tissue that I had from the business and dealing with the IRS and stuff, which is crazy. And that's a whole nother conversation. But that rental property helped me get out of it, and it gave me some time and it gave me some money. Like I was in a space where I had to move back in with my parents after the failure of the business, sold the rental property. I had a whole bunch of money and I had a whole bunch of time, which is usually a terrible recipe for somebody who's going in the wrong direction in life. But my thing was, like, I never got into drugs. Like I never got into like a crazy lifestyle. Like I was always on the path of like, I'm going to do good, because if I do good things will happen to me. It's funny. Like I was going to there's two things I was going to do with my time and with my money. One is the Pacific Crest Trail. So the Pacific Crest Trail, like I've been backpacking a ton. Like I love being in the mountains by myself. The Pacific Crest Trail is where you hike from Mexico all the way to Canada, and just like in one stretch. It takes you about 5 months to do. And it costs you around $5,000-$6,000 to do. A lot of people do that when they retire from like their career. They're 63 years old, they retire, the next summer they're doing the Pacific Crest Trail. So I wanted to do that because I had like a mini retirement moment. And the second thing I was going to do, my other option, was climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Again, it's like another $5,000. And that was something that like I chose to do Kilimanjaro because I'd rather spend, 2 weeks versus 5 months doing something and kind of get back to life. So for my birthday, I flew to Africa. I went to South Africa for a little bit just to acclimate, just to see the sights. Flew to Tanzania to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in 5 days. And to be honest, like I'm out there by myself, which I love doing solo travel. Like I've been to 22 different countries and all of them by myself. And so I I climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and I kind of have one of those moments of like, what am I gonna do with my life next? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I think I was 20, 27, 28 at the time, and I'm like, well, I had this business that didn't go how I wanted it to go, but I'm in a place where I can start again. And I remember my mentor, he'd always say to me, like, get into something where it's a long-term sale, like a relationship sale that is a higher ticket product, meaning like something that you can make a lot of commission off of if you get that relationship right. Instead of like selling a $7 t-shirt, sell a $700,000 XYZ. So of course I'm like looking to like sell yachts and like sell private jets and stuff like that. But that's kind of a whole nother gambit to get into, just get in that industry. But I found this company that sold street sweepers and combination trucks to cities, and those trucks average around 500, $600,000. And if you sell one of those, you get ten to $15,000 in commission. So you sell five, six, seven a year, like plus your base, like you're gonna make good money. And so yeah, when I was in Africa, I got the kind of the letter of intent. They said, "Hey, we want to interview for you. Yeah, we like your resume. Can you come back in?" I'm like, "Well, I'm out of the country right now, but can I come in when I get back?" And they said, "Sure, come on. When you get back, we'll interview you." And so the whole time that kind of put me at ease that I had something going for myself. But to be honest, like when I went to Africa, there was a sense that I was gonna go to Eastern Europe. Like, I wanted to go to Eastern Europe and train for boxing for, like, 2 months. There's a couple places in, I forgot, what was it, Latvia or Bosnia, that, like, you could live super cheap, like, your monthly expenses are, like, $400, like, everything's cheap, and you can get, like, a boxing coach and do the whole deal, and I wanted to do that. Like, again, I'm single, I got money, I got time. I wanted to go to Eastern Europe to learn how to box. And so, I wasn't gonna come back to the States. I got that job offer, or I got that interview offer, so I'm like, "Okay, well, I can blow that. It's just a job, like, I can always find a job." But I had another engagement on the calendar, which kind of forced me back, and so I came back to the States, and I did that interview, and they hired me, and then, that was my step into the public works industry where I feel like I'm home at right now.
And so that's crazy. Just from the Mount Kilimanjaro and the rental property, all of it. So yeah, you're 28, 27.
Mhm.
You're pretty much in this place of what the heck do I do next?
Yeah.
You've had a pretty wild run of it since college, and you kind of just by chance get a job offer back home in the Bay
Yeah.
Area.
Yeah.
And as you're working this job, you're learning a lot, but you get hit by, this is where the silver tsunami, as we call it, this is where you start to interact with it really personally, because you begin to get called in for trainings. You'll sell, say, a vac truck. You'll sell a VacCon vac truck, and you'll sell it to the old guy who knows about it, and then he retires, and then you kept getting roped into trainings.
Yeah.
Which obviously as a salesperson is not always very productive. There's turnover, there's retirements, and I assume kind of the same cities, the same clients keep pulling you into the same trainings. And so you mentioned this, that you were filming music videos and that video was already there. And so you say, "Hey, why don't I just record this once, give it to them, and then they don't have to call me, and I can keep selling trucks and stay on, to hit my numbers."
When I first got hired on, I wrote with the guy. So I was hired to take over from another salesman, take over his territory. His name was Mike Kennedy. Like, love him or hate him, he would give you a shirt off his back. He would tell you everything you needed to know to get you in the right position to succeed in this industry. So I'm forever thankful for him for just, pretty much every day I'd hop in the car with him and I'd be driving because he didn't want to drive. And he's like 70 years old at the time. And he's on his victory lap. And so he wasn't really trying to push or anything, but he was just trying to give back and just educate and pretty much be the guy that people could go to get their questions answered. And me, like, I've always had those questions and he would always answer them. And so I always would joke with him, say, "Man, I wish we could just put a camera on our dashboard, when we're on these little, sales calls, like going from call to call, which is like 45 minutes in between." And like, he's telling me like what he saw in the yard. He's telling me like what he heard from a guy, and like just all these little micro, indicators of like buying signs or not buying signs, or signs they're going with the competitor, or signs they don't want to talk to you, or just all these little hints, tips, and tricks that he had to uncover like whether we're going to get a sale or not. And I was like, "Man, I wish we could just record all this because there's other guys at our yard who would love to, who could probably benefit if they if they heard stuff like this." But you're right. Yeah, I got into the position after he retired, and it was my territory. Like, I had the San Francisco Bay Area, which is pretty, there's plenty of money to be made in it, right? And I got to the point where I started getting some good sales under my belt. And you sell a truck, you have to train them on everything. Your sales skills will sell your first one, but your service around that first truck will sell you the second through 10th through 15th truck. So like you could sell something, but if you don't support it, they're not going to call you again. So like that support is something you don't get paid for, but it's something that will pay, for you the next year, the next year, and the next year, and the next year. And a lot of people sleep on that. They think, oh, I got the sale, and they just cut and run. But it's like, no, you kind of got to stay on them. You got to stay in their pocket. You got to stay in their ear. And so I'd always be the guy to go out and like, oh, I'll do training. And again, as a salesman, like nobody wants to go do any more door knocking. You rather just go talk to the people that already bought from me. Like they're already happy. so, so that's the easy way to get out of sales stuff or sales activities. But yeah, those trainings, you train somebody on something and 2 months later, they're calling you back, say, hey, what was this? You said something about that. Or, hey, can you come back out? I had two guys who were out on vacation when you came out last time. So I started shooting myself on video. And again, like video has always been a medium for me, whether it's, personal life through church, whatever, like that's been something that I've shot over the years and like have, gotten good at because I love the medium of telling stories through video. And so I'd shoot the videos and I texted to the supervisor like, "Hey, you had a question on this." I go out to my backyard, meaning my dealership yard because they had trucks there, and I'd say, "Okay, the questions you had, here's the answer to that question." I text the supervisor the video, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool. Send me a video on this or send me a video on that." And so, and again, like I had a business in the past, like I kind of always thought, like, let me find a corner in this market that Joseph Blackman could play in to extract some, some funds out of. And so that was kind of like that seed planted of like, I could start a service around this because they like it. A lot of dealers, a lot of manufacturers don't do it. They don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it. Like videos, people are still like think it's the boogeyman. They still think it's super hard to shoot video. And of course I can make it sound complicated to scare people away, but let's be honest, like that thing in your pocket, you can shoot good video with that and solve a problem through training with that in your pocket. But
It's never
but
been easier.
yeah, right? Yeah. But it's one of those things, it's easy to conceptualize, but it's hard to execute on. And so once I started going, "Oh, I can execute on this because nobody else is," that's where the impetus of Vitendo Training Solutions came from. And then moonlighting with Vitendo while I was still working at a dealer, I got to the point where the job was kind of getting in the way of the success of Vitendo, and I saw way more upside in Vitendo than I saw with being a salesman at the job. And so, you have that conversation with God and with your wife, and you go, okay, it's time. So you cut ties, and now you're back to being employed by yourself, and which is scary. It's scary, and there's times where it's like, man, would be cool to have a paycheck every 2 weeks, but then there's times where like, I'm so glad I left.
And so, with permission from God and your wife,
Yeah.
you
Right.
you quit your job. You
Yeah.
quit your, I mean, pretty lucrative, well-paying job
Yeah.
to do your own thing. You see so much potential in Vitendo, and so you mentioned Mount Kilimanjaro. Vitendo means teach in Swahili.
Yeah.
And so I was curious, your connection to East Africa, whether it's familial or a study abroad in college or
Yeah.
what, but you sort of answered my question. It does that kind of harken back to your time in Africa?
Yeah, yeah. It was literally like, and you have to hire a Sherpa to climb the mountain, and so of course the Sherpa to kill time, they like teach you words, like you learn about Akuna Matata and stuff like that. They teach you about the local, the fauna and flora, like but they teach you Swahili words also, so you're kind of learning a bite-sized micro piece of the language. And so I like some of the words. And what I was thinking about is 2 a.m. I'm sitting in my underwear and I'm trying to figure out a name for my company. I'm like, what would be cool? That's like, see, like, what is Google? Like, nobody knows what that word is. Like, Facebook doesn't make sense. Like, some of these big companies, they have these names of their companies that like they kind of pull out of the ether, and then they develop their own, I would say, lore behind it. And so I wanted to have something that like not too many people were familiar with, but something that was kind of catchy. And so Vitendo, it made sense. So I literally typed in Swahili, like, teaching, repeated learning, and the word Vitendo came up. But it's unfortunate. There's like so many companies in like Africa called Vitendo. But there's nothing in America that's called Vitendo. So it just made sense.
And so in that first year, do you have, a partner? Do you have, I don't know, backing from people, or is it's all you? It's this side
No,
hustle that you're now going full time with.
yeah, and that was the thing. Again, like I'd always advocate like don't quit your day job until you have to. Like your 9 to 5 should fund your 5 to 9 until your 9 to 5 gets in the way of your 5 to 9. So, like, make your money with your job, use that fuel, which that's all money is fuel. It gives you fuel for the airplane you're trying to take off of your business. So use that fuel to fund your 5 to 9, like what you do after work, because your 5 to 9 will probably be more lucrative and be a better of a lifestyle play than your 9 to 5. Because again, I had to show up to the office every day. I had to have a sales beat. I had to, put in call reports on who I talked to and how long I talked to them, or what I talked to them about. Nobody wants to do that. Just be honest. Nobody wants to do that. And so I had enough speaking engagements. I had enough deals. I had enough beta clients. Beta clients, that's a little bit more tactical. That's where you do something for somebody for free just to show your work and also to sometimes get a logo, and just kind of get experience in a certain thing. And so the deals that I had on the table and then kind of like the way my 9 to 5 was getting in the way, it just made sense. But yeah, there was no like, Joseph went out and raised funds. I guess I don't know. I'm one of those guys. I want to raise funds the old school way through customers, through actual sales. Like yeah, when I had money, like, do we always make the best decisions with it? Versus when you need to be scrappy, you need to be resourceful. I think those were the best decisions are made, even though it's tough because you wish you had an extra 15, 20, $50,000 to do certain things you want to do, but you're always forced to figure it out in the scrappy way. So yeah, there was no like, and people like I see so much in our industry, like, oh, I wouldn't raise the Series A, and you start out, they get $250,000 for some program. It's like, okay, that's cool. You hire somebody, then the next one like it's a never ending treadmill of when you start taking on funding. If you don't have the sales to back it up, and I always wanted to have the sales, make sure I'm doing everything right, and then maybe in the future, if somebody said, hey, I'll give you a couple $1 million to really blow this thing out of the water, let's do it because I've already have that base of like this thing works, the customers like it, the customers use it, and now I could just throw lighter fluid on it.
In our conversation, you said you had some internal champions.
When you're selling to a group, again, B2B is different than B2C. B2B, business to business, you're selling to a committee. It's like 5, 6, 7 people that all need to like bless the product or service before they say yes to it. And so the people that I've met through the podcast, the people that I've met through trade shows or speaking at some of these conferences have become internal champions. So you get those people to come in that they buy into Vitendo. They're like, yeah, we want this, we like this. Now they have to sell it to their, compadres within that organization. And sometimes those internal champions, they're great, but it's tough because they can leave, or they can be an internal champion that like people don't trust them. Like, you ever talk to somebody and you can kind of tell that they're not liked in their own organization? They might be cool to you, but you can tell like nobody likes you where you're from, bro. Like, or not that they don't like you, but they don't trust you with, X amount of thousands of dollars, or you don't have the decision making power. So sometimes those internal champions can make a deal for you, and God bless them, but sometimes they can, send it to the graveyard because they can bring it up. And if they're the person bringing it up and nobody likes them or trusts them, that deal will go to the graveyard. And you're like, what happened? And you could tell that, like, oh, they weren't the guy. If you would have found somebody else or found more people to bring it on. And again, this is tactical. Like, you never want to have just one person in any account that can bless your deal. You kind of want to bring as many people along for the ride as possible, because if one person gets their hand slapped or one person leaves, like this, there's so many people, they'll be a supervisor and they'll go be a director down the road for at a different city. It's like, well, you could have said something. You've been interviewing for 6 months. Like, you should have told me that you're about to leave. And so that when I say internal champions, like, can make you or break you, like, that's, they can leave and send a deal to the graveyards.
Sure. And it sounds like you've experienced that a number
Oh
of
yeah.
times.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It stings every time. It stings because you put in so much. I would say time. It's a relationship sale. You're meeting people, you're talking to them, you're going back and forth. And when they just say, "Oh, I'm going down the road to for a different job," it's like, well, okay. Like, are you gonna bring Vitendo over there? Like, we got to start fresh. And so, yeah, but again, you get an internal champion, and you can close 3 accounts just off of one person because they're that proverbial woman at the well, and they're just screaming about all your praises, and now you got somebody who's on your side out there for you.
You you run the Public Works podcast.
Yeah.
How did that start up? When did you decide that you wanted to get into podcasting and that that was a good platform for, the people that you work with and for your business?
I knew I needed to start a podcast in the industry to talk to the people who I was going to be doing business with. Um, that there was nothing like that when I got in the industry. There was nothing like that when I got in the industry. It was unfortunate that there was no YouTube channel, no podcast, no like kind of a watering hole that you can go and hear like the stories, the anecdotes, the nomenclature, the verbiage, and just like hear about how the industry works. You had to learn it through people. And so I was like, well, I want to start a podcast. And of course, the dealer that I was working for, they kind of laughed at me. It was like, I'm like, let's start a podcast. Like every rep can start their own show. Here's how much it doesn't cost to start a podcast. We can literally whip out our iPhones and video me standing with a guy in his yard and ask him about who he is and how he likes to cook his steak. And who wouldn't take that conversation? And and miraculously, when you have somebody on your show, you become friends with them. You become buddies. You become like that that trusted partner because again, you talk to them about who they are and what they do. And so the podcast was something I knew that in order to be, and I always say MVP, like most visible person in the industry. Value is subjective, but I feel like visible, you start to get to a brand or a business brand or a personal brand that people just know you for something. And fortunately, but unfortunately, I'm known for being the podcast guy. I've got 370 something episodes, and it's a show that people can go to listen to the problems, listen to the anecdotes of people just like themselves all across the country. And I interview people about who they are, and I highlight the person behind the position. I'm not on there pitching a product. I'm not on there talking about something super hyper specific in water or in civil or in streets or anything. Just talking to people about themselves, and who can't listen in on that conversation and be a fly on the wall. So over time, like I told my wife, I'm like, 3 years ago when I went to PWX in San Diego, I didn't know anybody. Like, I didn't have any on the floor conversations. I didn't have any, podcast interviewees that were there, but we just did PWX in Chicago. It's 2025. Dude, like, I can't get 20 feet without somebody saying, "Hey, what's up, man?" Because either I had them on the show or they know somebody about, or they listen to the show. Like, and I spoke 4 times at the event, like, 4 speaking engagements, which is crazy to think. Again, 3 years ago is nothing. And so the podcast has got me into certain rooms and got me in certain positioning that like there's plenty of rooms for podcasts. Everybody should start their own podcast or their own show to make to be introduced to the people who they can't get in front of like on a normal sales beat.
Yeah, I can confirm because I was there that everybody knew who you were at PWX, and it was impossible just to talk to you because inevitably someone comes in, like, "Hey, just want to say hi," and it was hard to even have a conversation with you because so many people wanted to reach out, and so that's interesting. You attribute a lot of that to the podcast and
Yeah,
telling a
yeah.
lot of human stories. So MVP, most visible person, that has
Mm,
clearly really, grown your brand.
yep.
So much so that I think you even were featured in, was it Municipal Sewer and Water?
Yeah. That was one of those situations where I remember reading that magazine when I first got into the industry because at my dealer, they had all the industry magazines just for whoever's sitting waiting for their truck to just read through stuff on the industry. I remember reading through these and like, man, how can we get in this magazine? Like, how can I get my company in this magazine? And so when I went on my own, I'm like, I still want to get in this magazine. Obviously, it's got circulation. Obviously people read it. I mean, you talk to a public works guy, they get 50 to 100 spam emails a day. So email isn't really the best place to reach them at, if you want their captive, their eye and ear. And so, but people read these magazines and I see them on people's desks all the time. And so I knew some people again through the podcast and they're like, hey, you got any cool projects? I'm like, actually, I got this project that I did with Watsonville. It's pretty cool, pretty unique. They're like, tell me about it. So I told them about it and they wrote a story on it. And I'm like, this is cool. Like, I didn't know this is how it works. I thought I would have to like pay for it or like, sign up for some huge sponsorship package for the magazine to get my, my service in there. But no, I just had a cool case study and they're like, well, let's do it. And so, yeah, that's the power of just being on the podcast and meeting people and just, again, delivering on what I say I'm going to deliver on.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you can bring the content to those magazines, they want it. Just like a
Yeah.
salesperson, they have quotas every month. They have a magazine to fill.
Yep.
And, if you can come in with good stuff, then they want to show it. They
You
want to
get it. Yeah.
showcase
You
it.
get
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. So you're here now. You're a big name in public works. You're
I wouldn't say
you're
that.
running Vitendo. Well, you're on your way. You're on your
Yeah.
way. For speaking engagements at the Public Works Expo
And,
is a
and
pretty
all
big deal.
that's intentional. Like, I, like there's so many people in this industry that say, oh, I just want to be behind the scenes or I just want to kind of, play the back. And I understand that. I'm the same way. Like, am I a super extrovert? No. Like at these conferences, I just want to go to my hotel room and, FaceTime the wife and kids and just kind of watch a show or a movie on my laptop. Like, I don't want to go out. I don't want to talk to more people. Like, I have to do this to get to where I want to be. So like there's a sense of like this is a necessary evil. Like 10 years from now, I don't want to have to go to all these conferences. If I want to go just to like, me and Andrew, we go, we say a couple words to each other, say how, how's the wife and kids, blah, blah, blah. Like that's what I want to go for. I don't want to have to walk the floor, like, do all that. I like doing it because I know it's a means to an end, but like, I don't want to nobody wants to have to go to a conference to stand behind a table and say, hey, let me tell you about my service. But we do it because we know that's what's going to get us to our next level in life. So, yeah, it's like I don't want to be famous just to be famous. I want to be famous so I can do what I need to do, solve the problems I need to solve in the industry and be on about my ways.
But if you're not there, then who's gonna make the video shorts? Who's gonna film all those?
Dude, again, like what I do, I don't put rockets in the air. What I do, anybody can do what I do. Like it's anybody. It's an iPhone. Like I set up, it's an $18 tripod that's broke, and I set it up and say, "Hey, here's 3 questions I'm going to ask you." Those things go. I wouldn't say viral, but those things go nuts on LinkedIn because people like seeing that stuff. They post it about themselves. Again, you interview somebody about themselves, they're going to reshare it. Now you get to meet their network and you know 2,000 impressions later, now I have, instead of talking to one person, I just got in front of 2,000 more people. Like, why isn't everybody doing that?
And that mindset has gotten you up to 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is pretty impressive. I mean, as far as public works goes, you're one of the influencers. You know what I mean? The numbers are there, whether you like it or not. I mean, you're up there. What's next for you, Joseph?
Shoot, next,
I
I've been on a kind of a war path just to change and like I would say the branding around me. Like the podcast is great. A lot of people know me for that, but I don't make money off the podcast. Vitendo Training Solutions is my passion. Like again, getting the knowledge from the people who have it to the people who want it is what I want to do. I want to create a place or a space where somebody who's just getting into the industry, or maybe they're even thinking about getting into the career of public works, they can go to a website that I create, find all the questions, the answers to all the questions they have, whether it's about pumps, trucks, whatever, like water, wastewater, streets. They can find all this content. Now, of course, through video, because I'm biased, but they can find all this content, learn what they need to learn, and then operate more efficiently. That's my jam. Like the podcast kind of serves in that because I get to tell the stories of the people, and we can relate with people better than we can relate with a truck or a process. So the podcast helps out in that regard. But I would say switching the energy from me being great at podcasting or just doing the song and dance, and I want to be great at Vitendo. Like I want people to go, oh, that's what that guy does. I need to talk to him about that versus let me try to get on this podcast.
That was Joseph Blackman, the man behind Vitendo Training Solutions. I'm excited to keep watching where he goes, and if you feel the same way, you can find him and Vitendo via the links in the description below. While Vitendo seems so simple, he's right. There's so much untapped potential to capture institutional knowledge with the cameras on our phones for our future utility workers to reference and learn from. As the silver tsunami swells, so much important information is leaving our cities, which means if we don't capture it now, the next generation will have to relearn it the hard way. Well, folks, that's the end of our inaugural episode. Please stay tuned for more interviews with innovators, entrepreneurs, and inventors dedicated to making our utilities more affordable, easier to operate, and meet the needs of the 21st century. We'll see you next time on The Meter.